Hello and welcome. Our topic for this discussion is about the cell. The cell can be defined as a structural and functional unit of life. It is also regarded as the basic unit of biological activity. Living organisms can actually be divided into two types, prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. So when we say prokaryotic or prokaryotes, which comes from the Greek words pro, which means before, and karyon, which means nucleus, these are cells which lack a well-defined nucleus and possess relatively simple structure, and they are being represented by bacteria. Now the next type is what we call the eukaryotes or the eukaryotic cells, coming from the Greek words eu, which means true, and karyon, which means nucleus. So these types of cells possess a well-defined nucleus and are more complex in their structure and function. This includes the fungi, plants, and animals. This table shows a comparison of prokaryotes and eukaryotes. So prokaryotes are represented by what we call the eubacteria and archaebacteria, and their size is between 1 to 10 micrometers. Now the eukaryotes are the fungi, plants, and animals. Prokaryotes are single-celled compared to eukaryotes, which are single or multicellular. In prokaryotes, they have organelles, cytoskeleton, but some are missing. In eukaryotes, cell division apparatus is present, complicated, and specialized. In prokaryotes, they are small, circular, no introns plasmid. They have DNA, while eukaryotes are large in nucleus and many introns. This is another comparison between prokaryotic and eukaryotic cells. So the size of the prokaryotic cells are small compared to eukaryotic cell. Cell membrane in prokaryotic cell, it's enveloped by a rigid cell wall. Now in eukaryotic cell, the cell is enveloped by a flexible plasma membrane. Subcellular organelles, prokaryotic cell absent, and in eukaryotic cell, they have distinct organelles like mitochondria, nucleus, lysosomes, and others. In prokaryotic cell, the nucleus is not well defined. DNA is found as nucleoid and histones are absent. In eukaryotic cells, nucleus is well defined and it is surrounded by a membrane. DNA is associated with histones. Energy metabolism. In prokaryotic cells, mitochondria are absent. Enzymes of energy metabolism are bound to the membrane. In eukaryotic cells, enzymes of energy metabolism are located in the mitochondria. When it comes to cell division, prokaryotic cells usually involves fission and no mitosis, while in eukaryotic cell, mitosis is involved. And for the cytoplasm, prokaryotic cells, they have organelles and cytoskeleton, which are absent in the cytoplasm, while in eukaryotic cell, it contains organelles and cytoskeleton, or a network of tubules and filaments. Now let us take a look into what is inside of the cell. So this is a cross-section of what's inside of a cell and the different parts of the cell. Now we will be discussing several important organelles or parts of the cell that later on will also be discussed in our discussion for biochemistry and metabolism. Let us start with what we call the cell membrane or the plasma membrane. The plasma membrane envelopes the cell. It encloses the cell and separates it from the extracellular matrix or the outside environment of the cell. As you can see, the cell membrane is made up of a lipid bilayer, and embedded in it are different sorts of macromolecules, like we have here We have here the glycoprotein, and we also have glycolipids, cholesterol, other carbohydrates, globular proteins, integral proteins, and others. The plasma membrane regulates the movement of materials into and out of the cell, and it also facilitates electrical signaling between them. So, when we describe the plasma membrane or the cell membrane, we would always hear or meet the term semi-permeable because it allows certain molecules but not others to enter into the cell. The next part of the cell that we are going to take a look into is what we call the nucleus. So this here is our nucleus. The nucleus is the largest cellular organelle. It is the most prominent organelle of the cell, and all cells of the body contains nucleus except the circulating red blood cells. The uppermost layer of our skin may not possess a readily identifiable nucleus. In some cells, the nucleus occupies most of the available space. It is surrounded by a double membrane, which we call this one. This is actually a double membrane, which we call the nuclear envelope. The outer membrane is continuous with the membranes of the endoplasmic reticulum. At certain intervals, the two nuclear membranes have nuclear pores with this one, the nucleopore, with a diameter of about 90 nanometers. These pores permit the free passage of the products synthesized in the nucleus into the surrounding cytoplasm. The nucleus contains DNA, or the deoxyribonucleic acid, which is the repository of genetic information, or the chemical basis of genes which governs all the functions of the cell. Actually, the nucleus has two main functions. It contains all the DNA of the cell, and it directs the activities of the cell. The nucleus of the eukaryotic cell contains a dense body, which we call this one as the nucleolus. It is rich in RNA, particularly the ribosomal RNA, which enters the cytosol through the nuclear pores. The nucleolus is the area for RNA processing and ribosome synthesis. It is very prominent in cells actively synthesizing proteins. The next part of the cell that we will be discussing are the mitochondria. These rod-like organelles or filamentous bodies are what we call the mitochondria. Mitochondria are the centers of the cellular respiration and energy metabolism. They are regarded as the powerhouses of the cell with variable size and shape. About 2,000 mitochondria, occupying about 1/5 of the total cell volume, are present in a typical cell. The mitochondria are composed of a double membrane system. As we can see from here, we have an outer membrane and an inner membrane. The outer membrane is smooth and completely envelopes the organelle. The inner membrane is folded to form cristae, which occupy a larger surface area. The internal chamber of the mitochondria is referred as the matrix or mitosol. The mitochondrial matrix contains a circular double-stranded DNA, RNA, and ribosomes. So, the mitochondria is actually equipped with an independent protein synthesizing machinery. It is estimated that about 10% of the mitochondrial proteins are produced in the mitochondria. So far, we have already identified 3 parts of the cell. So we have the plasma membrane or the cell membrane, we have the nucleus, and also the mitochondria. Now the next part of the cell that we are going to take a look into is the endoplasmic reticulum. So here we have the endoplasmic reticulum and this one. It is a network of membrane-enclosed spaces that extends throughout the cytoplasm. So some of these thread-like structures extend from the nuclear pore to the plasma membrane. So the endoplasmic reticulum can actually be either smooth or the smooth endoplasmic reticulum does not contain ribosomes. It is involved in the synthesis of lipids and metabolism of drugs, besides applying calcium ions for the cellular functions. A large portion of the endoplasmic reticulum is studded with ribosomes to give a granular appearance, which is referred to as the rough endoplasmic reticulum. Ribosomes are the factories of protein biosynthesis. The next part of the cell is the Golgi body or the Golgi Apparatus. It is a membrane-bound organelle that is a network of flattened, smooth membranes and vesicles. It may be considered as the converging area of endoplasmic reticulum. The main function of this organelle is for protein sorting, packaging, and secretion. It is also involved in the membrane synthesis, particularly for the formation of intracellular organelles. The next parts of the cell that we are going to take a look into are the lysosomes and the peroxisomes. Lysosomes are spherical vesicles enveloped by a single membrane. They are bags of enzymes which are regarded as the digestive tract of the cell since they are actively involved in digestion of cellular substances like proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. These lysosomes break down these macromolecules into their components for further use by the cells. Next, we have the peroxisomes, or also known as microbodies. They are single membrane cellular organelles. They are spherical or oval in shape and contain the enzymes peroxidase and catalase. They are prominent in leukocytes and platelets. The enzymes present in peroxisomes destroy the unwanted peroxides and other free radicals. Next, we have the cytoskeleton. Just like the human body is being supported by the skeletal system, the structure of the cell is also maintained by what we call the cytoskeleton, which is present underneath the plasma membrane. It is responsible for the shape of the cell, its motility, and chromosomal movements during cell division. The cytoskeleton is made up of a network of microtubules and microfilaments, which contains the proteins, pectin, and ankyrin. And lastly, we have the cytosol. The cellular matrix, which is collectively referred to as the cytosol, is basically a compartment containing enzymes, metabolites, and salts in an aqueous gel-like medium. Thus, we can infer that while cytosol is the fluid contained in the cell, cytoplasm is the entire content within the cell membrane.